Would you like to know how to put together your own NOO, non-owner occupied landlord list for sending out some direct mail? If you would like to learn how to do that, you're in the right place. Let's talk. Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with Two Listings Per Month. And on this channel, we talk about how you can reach out and generate 2 listings per month through direct mail, get people to call in and speak to you. So in order to do that, you need to have a mailing list to reach out to them. And so what I'd like to talk about is a topic that we've started to play with a little bit. We're starting to develop. Again, this is all in the process right now, so it's kind of interesting getting it hot off the press, so to speak, with all its blemishes, by the way, all the little challenges as we go. But you need to put together a list of what I call NOO, or non-owner occupant. That's also an investor list or a landlord list. People who own a piece of real estate that they don't live in it. And in particular, we're talking about houses, condos, and townhomes. They typically rent them out. They may keep them as vacant, but typically it's a landlord type of situation. We're going to talk about how to develop that list. Now, you really have two options. There may be more, but the ones that come to mind right now for me, the two options are: one, you can buy the list, and two, you can make your own. All right, so I'll go through both of those real quick. One, I looked into purchasing a list for my zip code because I like to start small on a zip code. If it works, then I'll multiply it out to other zip codes. You could start there. By the way, you could even start as small as maybe a carrier route, but you got to make sure you have enough data that you're going to get some good stats. So zip code seems to work well. I'll give you an example. I've been talking about this if you've been watching other videos, but I've got this zip code, and in this zip code, there are 1,512 properties, so 1,512 non-owner occupied properties. So properties where if you looked in the public records, here's the address of the property, and the mailing address to send to the owner is something different. Okay, so non-owner occupied, you're going to send mail to another location. And so if you can go out, and again, let me talk about the zip code. So 1,512. Of the 1,512, there are some owners that own multiple properties. So there are unique or distinct. It's right around 1,225. I think it's 1,226, but 1,225 property as addresses that we can send out to actual landlords or investors. Okay, once we call out through the multiple unit owners and get them down to one address, because you don't need to send 10 postcards to one address because they own 10 units. That'd be overkill. You just need to send them one, and it saves you on the mail, and it still gets you in front of them, and you still have the opportunity for multiple listings, which is pretty cool. In any event, you got to narrow that down to a true list for your mailings. And in this case, I want to give you the perspective of 1,500 total properties, about 1,225 landlords. And so if you did it on your own, you're going to start with that. You're probably going to get down to about 1,225. I haven't completed mine. I don't know. I can't give you the final number. It's probably going to be a little bit less than that, by the way, because I've got some homeowners associations and things like that own some property that we won't be using because they're using it for clubhouses and other things that they're popping up in the public record. So my final list is probably going to be closer to 1,200. But I want to give you a comparison, because if I go out and purchase, I just looked, I can buy a list, but the total count in the list in my zip code is just 660. Not half. So 660, if I buy the list, or if I take the time to build out my own list, it's going to be closer to 1,200 and something. So that's why you got to kind of look at the two different options. Now, let me give you some pros and cons, and then I'll tell you kind of how I'm filtering through my list. The pros and cons: if you buy the list, you get the name and the address of the property, you get the address of the mailing address for where you're going to send it, And then you also get a phone number to call. So if you're going to do phone on top of the mail, which is not a bad idea if you're up for that, then buying the list has an advantage in that you get the phone numbers. Whereas making your own list, you typically don't get any phone numbers unless you're very unique in your area. Okay, so I just wanted to give that scale. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but you had 1,500 properties, about 1,200 are actual individual owners of those properties. And then if you make your own, you're going to probably end up right around there. But if you go out and buy it, it's about half that, at least what I saw, half that, and about 660 with some, that'll include phone numbers though, which is an advantage. All right, so let's go back to making your own list and some of the things you'll have to do. So the way I would go about it is I go into my public records. You can either go directly in your public records, which most counties, in my case, a county will have the information, or you can go through your MLS, which is also advantageous because they've already crunched a lot of data. And so in my case, I went through my MLS and I pulled down data from there in their public records section. Your MLS probably has something similar. And you're going to pull that data down and get it into a spreadsheet. And then you're going to start sorting it, sifting and sorting it and organizing it. And that takes a little bit of time. Maybe later I'll do a full presentation on how I did the sifting and sorting. Today I'm just giving you the big picture. I'll give you a key factor here to do, and that is to look at the mailing address for the properties and sort by that. Because what you'll do is you'll find out all the duplicate mailing addresses, which basically means you've got an owner that owns multiple properties, and because all that mail is going out to them. It's not the property address, it's the mailing address for that property, right? So you've got the investment property, and then you got a mailing address to send to the owner of that investment property. And I'm talking about these owner addresses, the landlord addresses, and sifting and sorting by that. You'll see, and it's important to do it by that rather than the name, because some people will use their personal name, an LLC, multiple LLCs. So I've got it. I've already seen, I'm in one zip code and I'm already finding people who have a lot of units. And when I say unit, again, that could be a house, a condo, or a townhome. They got a lot of properties, a lot of doors, I think they like to say, in the rental side of the business. They got a lot of doors and all go into the same address. So it's the same owner, but you can see that that owner has used their personal name, their spouse's personal name. I saw them, they used their kid's personal name. That's what it appears to me. And then they also use different LLCs, because some people will do one LLC per property. Some will batch them together. They're doing liability risk reduction. And in any event, you don't need to send out to all these multiple pieces of mail to the same address. So you got to kind of see it by looking at the mailing address. So that's a big hint when you're sorting through this. So what I did was I went and sorted by my mailing address, and then I figured out what my duplicates were. And then I pick one as my primary. I actually label it prime. And next to that, I say how many units these people own. And then I'm going to go back in and start removing the duplicates while keeping the primary address. And you got to decide who you're going to mail to, which of those names and entities you'll use. I'm kind of particular, and then I'll get into that detail. You'd probably be fine even if you don't. But you do want to go through this sifting and sorting you don't want to mail to all 1,500 in my example. You want to mail to the 1,200, and you got to reduce that list by getting rid of, again, duplicate mailing addresses. That's the big hint there. Then also, I'll give you one other hint. As you're going through there, you'll see names of people you recognize in the industry. So what I mean by that is you'll see a real estate agent's name, and they've been very smart and they bought some property, and that's pretty cool. However, they don't get to get my mail. It would be a waste for me and them, right? So a waste of time. So I'm not going to mail out to an agent that I see on the list. Now, I don't do a full search on that. I don't cross-reference it with some kind of agent database, which you certainly could. But there are a lot of names that pop out, and you're like, oh man, I know who that is. And, they're a great person, but I'm not going to mail them and ask them to have me list their home because they'll never do that. It's a waste. So you're going to pop out things like that. Um, you could add your name to the list if you want to make sure the mailing is getting out. That's another pro tip. And I think that covers the basics of what I wanted to talk about today. I'm sure I missed a couple things, but again, maybe if you want, go ahead and put in the comment section if you're interested and if you want us to go through how we actually do all the sifting and sorting of the list to get it right. The big picture I wanted you to get was you got the two options, buy it or make it on your own. And I'm trying to think of the cost. You probably all want to know the cost. The cost to buy it was, and I don't remember exactly. I'm just going to spitball. I think it was a couple $100. I think it was a couple $100 to get the 660, and then it's free, or I'm paying it through my MLS, but it was free for me to get it down through the MLS as long as I did all the sifting and sorting. The only other downside, though, to the MLS is they created restrictions on how many you can download at a time. It's a pretty big number in my area. It's 7,500, but I bumped into the restriction problem as I'm trying to make lists. In the old days, because I've been around 30 years, in the old days, there were no restrictions. I downloaded cities because I like big data. I think you already know I was a big marketer, and I thought on a bigger scale. So I really like pulling all that data down. And the MLS today is now corporate and it's national, and they don't care about the little guy not in this area, at least in my experience, because I've been talking to him for weeks and not getting anywhere as far as allowing me to get more data, unfortunately. You may run into the same thing. But if you're doing a small list, especially in NOOs, like for instance, let me tell you why I'm saying that. In my zip code, I actually have 12,000. I think it's 12,005 properties. And so if I'm restricted to 7,500, I can't download the entire zip code and then sift and sort and decide one day I'm going to market to owner occupants, the other day non-owner occupants, et cetera. I'd have to do it in 2 downloads, and you can only download 7,500 per month. So that would be 2 months to just download the one zip code. And if you're going to do multiple zip codes, you can imagine now we're out 4, 5, 6 months, a year. It gets crazy, and you're losing all this time. So in that case, you might end up having to buy the data if you needed a huge data set. Anyway, that's why I went down that little rabbit hole. Hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, a like. We appreciate those. And if you have any questions for me, go ahead and drop them down in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet and you'd like to join us on this little journey, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And I hope this has been helpful, at least some ideas on how to build out your own NOO landlord list, these investors lists. For properties, because remember our last video, why we're even doing all this, it became apparent, at least in my zip code, that the non-owner occupied were 5 times more likely to sell than the owner occupied. Incredible, right? And so that's why we're working on building out this list. Anyway, hope that's been good for you. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye now.